First we take the charging handle from the HK. Yeah, good. Then the AK mag from the 5.56 AK. Wunderbar! The stock of the Galil. And finally, the direct impingement system of Stoner's masterpiece, the M16! Yeah! I've done it! It's alive! Alive! When Foxtrot Mike announced their Mike-102 carbine at SHOT Show 2023, it immediately caught my eye. I mean, what can I say? I'm a sucker for the odd and esoteric. But the majority of shooters will look at the Foxtrot Mike and ask, why? And that's a fair question. I mean, why would they use an HK-style forward charging handle, a modified direct impingement operating system, and 5.56 AK magazines when they could just build a standard AR-15 for a fraction of the cost? Well, as much as I'd like to answer that question in a short sentence or even a single word, it's a little more complex than that. Hell, I've even heard some people refer to it as a poor man's MCX. But is it? Well, let's put 1,000 rounds with the Mike-102 Franken-Gun and find out. The Foxtrot Mike Mike-102 rifle is a direct impingement semi-automatic carbine, or pistol, chambered in 223/5.56. It feeds from AK-101 pattern rock and lock magazines and ships with a metal reinforced polymer 30 round version from AC Unity in the box. And while everything I just said is 100% true, it leaves out tons of important details, aka minutia, that separate this gun from the countless modern sporting rifles on the market today. So like with most of my reviews, you may have noticed, let's start at the muzzle and work our way back to fully understand the Mike-102 and how it works. The carbine model reviewed ships with a 16-inch 1/8 twist 223 wild barrel with a 1/2x28 threaded muzzle topped with an A2 flash hider. This setup allows shooters to mount any muzzle device they like that works with a standard AR-15, like my Silencer Co. ASR suppressor or the single port Silencer Co. ASR brake that I used for more than half of the review. On a side note, the Foxtrot Mike gun ran flawlessly with a can, which is somewhat surprising considering it's a DI gun. Now speaking of which, the Mike-102 uses an intermediate length gas system to strike the perfect balance of reliability and soft recoil. Above the gas tube and around the barrel, the gun uses a proprietary slimline free-floated aluminum M-Lok railed handguard. The handguard interfaces with the barrel nut like any other M-Lok rail, but it features a unique cutaway halfway down for a forward charging handle. That's the HK influence. This charging handle has two great features. Most importantly, it's non-reciprocating, and secondly, it can be swapped from one side to another. The ergonomics of it are, well, surprisingly great, and I personally like how it allows shooters to keep their support hand on the handguard itself when charging the weapon. That said, I would have preferred it to have both a lock-open position, like on an MP5, and if it was a little bit bigger. As it stands, when the gun gets really dirty and the lubrication of the Mike-102 dries up, it can feel a little tough to charge when you've got a full magazine loaded in the magazine well. The good news is that future models of the Mike-102 will have both of these upgrades integrated into them. And if the 9mm offerings from Foxtrot Mike are any indication, they'll be available for purchase separately as an upgrade in the future for very little money. Continuing back, the Mike-102's upper receiver features a monolithic rail that has a clever little notch and peg interface to the handguard rail that keeps the two perfectly aligned. But really, it's what's inside the upper that sets the Foxtrot Mike apart from the competition. Its integrated recoil system. In the simplest of terms, the Mike-102 uses a truncated bolt carrier group that sits against a recoil spring trapped around the guide rod. This rod is captured inside the receiver with a small plug at the rear where a traditional AR-15 would normally have its charging handle. Now, if your first thought is why, you're not alone. Foxtrot uses this proprietary variant of DI because it negates the necessity of a buffer tube / receiver extension. This, in turn, means that shooters can utilize a folding stock, and unlike aftermarket folding add-ons to standard AR-15s, it still permits the gun to be fired from the folding position, and more than once. In order for the Mike to use 100 series 5.56 AK magazines, it needs a special lower receiver. So the guys at Foxtrot Mike decided to make a billet one just for that. And I'll touch on the features shortly, but I need to address the elephant in the room. Why? See, AR-15 or Stanag pattern magazines are abundant, cheap, and proven. I mean, why would the gun's designers utilize a vastly less common magazine instead? Well, after talking to Paul, the owner and lead designer at Foxtrot Mike, I discovered there are effectively two reasons for this. The first and most important is lockup. AK-style rock and lock magazines are nearly impossible to screw up inserting into a firearm properly. In fact, I've never seen a shooter take a shot with an AK and have the magazine fall out. But I've seen this exact same scenario play out countless times with AR-15 shooters at matches or even plinking sessions when they're trying to shoot under the clock. The reason for this has to do with mechanical advantage, you know, the stuff you studied in grade school and probably forgot the name of later. Basically, once the front lip of an AK magazine is inside the magazine well, the shooter uses a lever when rocking the rear tab past the magazine release and into the gun. And since the magazines themselves are fairly long, this means that all of the distance you rock the magazine from nearly parallel to perpendicular to the barrel gets converted into force. And since doing so gives an audible click, shooters will have to have the cognitive capacity of a shoe to mess it up. The second big reason is probably realistically cool factor. I mean, it feels pretty badass to rock and lock a magazine into the well. In addition to the rock and lock style AK magazines that it uses, the Foxtrot carbine also takes another page from the AK's playbook and improves upon it by use of an oversized magazine release paddle. It's very easy to use and allows shooters to perform either standard or so-called Spetsnaz style reloads with ease, though Iraqi reloads would be very tricky unless you're left-handed. Now behind the magazine release, the Mike has a unique ambidextrous selector switch made of polymer, though shooters can use any AR compatible one that they choose. Let's keep going back. At the rear of the Mike-102 receiver, the billet lower features a threaded portion for attaching a standard AR-15 buffer extension and stock. But what's unique is that the Foxtrot Mike makes a Picatinny adapter that fills this hole and allows mounting a folded stock like the A3 Tactical Skelestock I used for the review. They also make an adapter for the Zukov stock, which is also pretty cool. Now the A3 Tactical Skelestock is technically non-standard, but since the pistol models of the Mike-102 originally used a brace variant of the Skelestock, I opted to use one on the rifle. Plus, I'm told by the engineers at Foxtrot Mike that this configuration will be available from the factory in the near future. The Skelestock is made of aluminum and can be configured to fold into either direction, and another noteworthy aspect of the stock is that it has a rubberized butt plate at the back and ambidextrous QD sling mounts. But I've told you about all the cool features. Did the gun actually run, or is it just neat? Because while all these features are incredible, they aren't worth a damn if the gun is inaccurate or unreliable. So, have the Mike-102 fare? Well, in terms of reliability, the Foxtrot Mike Mike-102 was nearly perfect. I experienced 10 malfunctions across 1,000 rounds. The first 7 occurred during the initial factory recommended 300 round break-in period, and only once the gun got very hot, dry, and dirty. The remaining 3 happened after a 400 round extended shooting session when running Tula brand steel cased ammunition without any additional lubrication other than what the gun came with from the factory. Also, it's important to note that every one of these malfunctions was a failure to extract. Side note, when coupled with a sound suppressor like my Silencer Co. ASR Saker 762, the Foxtrot ran flawlessly, even with a substandard steel-cased ammunition like Tula or Wolf. In fact, the recoil impulse felt noticeably lighter, and getting back on target was much quicker. As far as accuracy, I stretched the legs on the Foxtrot carbine out to 500 yards using a Trijicon 4x32 ACOG, and at that distance, the gun had no issues hitting a silhouette target, even with Igman 5.56 ammunition, which is, to be honest, on a good day, a 2 MOA round. When I ran some SIG Performance 223 77 grain match ammo through the Mike-102, I was able to get as small as a 1.3 MOA group fairly reliably. But truth be told, the 6.5 pound mil-spec trigger really makes a shooter earn both hits at range and tight groups. Thankfully, the gun uses a standard AR-15 trigger group, so shooters can install their favorite Geisley, ALG, or LaRue trigger group and make their hits substantially easier. So what's my verdict? Well, lightweight, accurate, and reliable, the Foxtrot Mike Mike-102 feels and performs like a much more expensive gun than it is. And with an MSRP of around $899, it certainly seems like a poor man's MCX. The biggest difference is how the gun has to be treated. Because despite its AK influences, it's not an AK. So shooters will have to keep the gun at least somewhat oiled to keep it running reliably. But since I only put a few drops of hops in the gun after 750 rounds and still only had a 0.1% failure rate, this really isn't nearly as big of an issue as it might seem. Thanks guys. For AmmoLand TV, I'm Jim Grant. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content.